Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're absolutely not just going to run through a boring list of words to memorize. Nope, we're taking the vocabulary from Sadlier's Unit 6 and using it in a completely different way. We're going to treat these words as essential tools, kind of like a linguistic magnifying glass to decode a massive ancient mystery. And then we'll solve some literary puzzles along the way. Words have so much power, and when you really understand them deeply, all these hidden narratives suddenly just snap right into focus. We're kicking off our investigation in the high desert plains of southwest Peru. What we're looking at here is an aerial view of a colossal bird, but this is no ordinary drawing. This is part of the Nazca Lines, which are gigantic geoglyphs literally etched right into the ground. Because the climate there is so dry and windless, these drawings have managed to survive for centuries. To give you a real sense of the sheer scale we're dealing with, this specific bird stretches an incredible 440 feet long. It's absolutely monumental. And this brilliantly illustrates the core puzzle that brings us to our very first vocabulary word. When you look at these massive, mathematically precise lines, you just have to ask, who on earth were the anonymous designers of these shapes? Like, how did people working centuries ago, way before airplanes were even a thought, create something clearly meant to be seen from the sky? Now, you probably know that the word anonymous means unnamed, unknown, or lacking individuality. But when you really think about it in this context, it hits differently. By understanding that these creators are completely anonymous, we realize that history hasn't left us a single signature, not a journal, no blueprints, nothing. The sheer scale of what they achieved becomes infinitely more baffling simply because their identities are entirely unknown to us today. Just imagine being an early pilot flying over the Peruvian desert and suddenly seeing this. Our source text actually describes that exact moment of rediscovery. It notes how the huge shapes, prominent from the air, first attracted world attention in the 1920s when pilots reported these unique and inimitable creations. Mastering words like prominent, meaning standing out so as to be easily seen, and inimitable, meaning totally matchless, really helps us vividly picture that pure shock those pilots must have felt. Section 1. Decoding the scientific debate. All right, so the lines were discovered, but what do they actually mean? Let's step into the shoes of the scientists who've spent decades trying to crack this puzzle. Notice how the source text uses some truly powerful vocabulary here to describe the intense energy of the scientific community. It says experts have been locked in a lively, dynamic debate, doing their absolute utmost to explain something that, honestly, still frustrates rational explanation. The authors didn't just call it a long discussion, right? They chose very specific words to convey a real sense of passion. Dynamic is the absolute key word here. It means active, energetic, and forceful. A dynamic debate isn't some dusty, boring academic disagreement. It's forceful. It's constantly shifting and evolving as new evidence is uncovered, with brilliant minds passionately challenging one another. To give you a taste of that dynamic clash of ideas, on one side, you've got mathematician Maria Riesch, who argued the lines were this giant sun calendar, an astronomical observatory. But then British astronomer Gerald Hawkins pushes back hard. He criticizes the whole theory, claiming the alignments were just a crude, temporary, or makeshift network of targets that mathematically just didn't hold up. Two brilliant minds going head-to-head over the dirt in Peru. But hey, the debate definitely doesn't stop with serious astronomers. Consider this depiction of a monkey, which is an unbelievable 360 feet long. With shapes like this etched into the earth, some eccentric theorists went completely off the deep end. One commentator actually proposed that these lines were literal runways for space aliens who landed and intermarried with Earthlings. Yes, ancient aliens. No joke. Which leads us to a really spicy sentence from our source passage. The author asks, was this theory deliberately intended to dupe the public? Perhaps it was, since its principal proponent previewed his ideas in a highly profitable best-selling book. Talk about throwing shade with vocabulary, right? This is a perfect example of using specific words to question someone's true motives. Let's break down that word dupe. To dupe someone means to trick or deceive them, or it can be used as a noun for the person who is easily tricked. By using this exact word, the author is basically looking right at us and asking, were we all just getting played by a clever writer looking to cash in on a bestseller? It completely flips how you read the text. Section 2, choosing the right word. Okay, now it's your turn. Let's put your detective instincts to the test by applying these words to some interactive contextual clues straight from the source. We've got a blank to fill here. The exhibition at the fair was intended to give visitors a blank of what life might be like in 20 years. Your choices are A, preview, or B, dupe. Which word correctly describes getting an early glimpse of the future? If you guessed preview, you hit the nail on the head. It's the only word that makes sense here for something seen in advance, like getting a sneak peek at the world of tomorrow. Let's try another one. He still doesn't realize that he has been used as a blank by our opponents to do their dirty work for them. Are we looking for dupe or makeshift? Think about the context of someone being tricked into doing someone else's dirty work. What are they acting as? You got it. The answer is dupe. In this context, it's acting as a noun, a person who is easily deceived or completely used by others. Great job applying that to the context. Section 3, Sherlock Holmes literary context. So we've used our vocabulary to investigate real-world anomalies, right? Let's shift gears and see how these exact same tools help us crack the world's greatest fictional detective. We're talking about Sherlock Holmes, arguably the most iconic and recognizable fictional detective in history. In Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's classic stories, there's no CGI, no dramatic movie score to set the mood. The entire atmosphere is built exclusively on precise, evocative word choices. The vocabulary literally sets the scene. Just listen to this line from The Adventure of the Speckled Band. Dr. Watson observes, "I had never seen my friend's face so grim or his brow so dark as it was when we turned from the scene of this investigation." Feel how that one word, grim, instantly paints a picture of a severely dangerous situation. And here's why that word works so incredibly well. Grim doesn't just mean a little sad. It means stern, merciless, fierce, savage, or cruel. Because we know the true weight of that definition, the dramatic stakes just go through the roof. If a mind as brilliant as Sherlock Holmes is looking grim, we know for a fact that things are deadly serious. Or check out this prime example from The Man with the Twisted Lip. A character reveals, "And the rascally Lascar who runs it has sworn to have vengeance upon me." I mean, wow, the tension absolutely skyrockets with a threat like that. Why does the tension skyrocket? Look at the meaning. Vengeance is punishment in return for a wrong. It implies unusual force or violence. Vengeance is definitely not everyday anger. It's a terrifying, blood-soaked promise of violent retaliation. Recognizing the sheer intensity of a word like that makes the story virtually impossible to put down. Let's quickly recap what we've achieved today. We've decoded the anonymous designers of the Nazca Lines, we waded through some highly dynamic scientific debates, we learned how to spot when someone is trying to play us for a dupe, and we explored the grim, high-stakes literary mysteries of Sherlock Holmes. By looking at these words in context, you aren't just memorizing definitions, you're actually learning how to unlock fascinating narratives. Which brings me to my final question for you to chew on today. As you step away from this explainer, ask yourself, how will an expansive vocabulary help you decode the next great mystery you encounter? What hidden stories out there, in the world and the news you read, or the books you enjoyed are just waiting for the right words to be fully revealed? Keep building that vocabulary and keep decoding your world. Thanks so much for joining me, and I'll catch you next time.